A 90-year-old black woman asked to check her balance. The millionaire laughed. Minutes later, he regretted it. Her voice trembled as it carried across the polished marble lobby of Sterling Union Bank. The sound echoed sharply, cutting through the low hum of wealth and impatience that filled the space. Conversations paused, heads turned. Some people stared with open curiosity, others with irritation, and a few with thinly veiled amusement. At the center of the lobby stood Victor Langford, the bank's president. At 54, he wore a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He stood tall, shoulders back, chin lifted, the posture of a man accustomed to being obeyed. When he heard the elderly woman's request, he let out a loud laugh. It wasn't warm, it wasn't friendly, it was sharp and dismissive, the kind of laugh meant to remind everyone who held power. Victor had spent decades dealing with executives, investors, and clients who spoke quietly and wore expensive watches. To him, the woman near the counter looked out of place, like someone who had wandered in by mistake. "Ma'am," he said loudly, making sure the entire lobby could hear, "I think there's been some confusion. This is a private financial institution. Perhaps the neighborhood credit union down the street would be more suitable for you." The woman, Evelyn Brooks, leaned gently on her worn wooden cane and did not move an inch. Her coat was plain, her shoes showed years of use, yet there was something unbreakable in her eyes. At 91, she had lived long enough to recognize disrespect the moment it appeared. "Young man," she said calmly, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a dark, weathered card, "I asked to check my balance. I didn't ask for advice about where I belong." She didn't raise her voice, she didn't plead, she simply spoke. Victor glanced at the card with open disgust. The edges were frayed, the numbers faint from age. It looked nothing like the sleek platinum cards he was used to seeing. In his mind, it was already fake, some cheap promotional item meant to cause trouble. He sighed dramatically and rolled his eyes. "Lena," he called out to his assistant, his tone dripping with sarcasm, "another person trying to impress us with pretend credentials." A few wealthy clients nearby chuckled. Some covered their mouths, pretending to hide their laughter. Evelyn didn't react. Her face remained composed, almost serene. If someone looked closely, they would have seen something else entirely. Certainty, the kind that only comes from surviving decades of hardship. Lena stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Sir, it would only take a moment to run the card through the system, just to be sure." "Absolutely not," Victor snapped. "I will not waste the bank's time on nonsense." He waved his hand sharply. That was when something unexpected happened. Evelyn smiled. It wasn't embarrassed, it wasn't nervous. It was deep and knowing, the kind of smile filled with memories. For a brief moment, Victor felt a strange tightness in his chest, like an unspoken warning. He ignored it. Two security guards began walking toward Evelyn. Their expressions were uneasy. No one enjoyed being told to intimidate an elderly woman. "Ma'am, Mr. Langford has asked that you step outside." Evelyn's eyes shifted, not with fear, but with resolve. She had grown up in the 1940s. She knew what step outside used to mean. "Young man," she replied softly, "I didn't say I was leaving. I said I want to check my balance." Victor laughed again, louder this time. "You see," he announced to the lobby, "this is exactly why we have security. Confused people demanding services they don't understand." A well-dressed woman near the seating area lifted her designer purse to hide her grin. "Poor thing, probably dementia. My housekeeper's mother was like that." Then Evelyn laughed. Not weakly, not bitterly, she laughed fully, her voice rich and steady, filling the marble space like music. The lobby fell quiet, startled by the sound. "Dementia," Evelyn said evenly. "That's interesting, because I remember very clearly scrubbing your grandfather's office floors in 1956. The silence that followed felt heavy. Victor froze. His family had owned Sterling Union since the early 1930s. Very few people knew anything personal about his grandfather. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly uncertain. "I was 16," Evelyn continued.
I worked after school so my mother and I could eat. Your grandfather liked to leave lit cigars on the marble desk just to see if I'd complain. I never did." Lena swallowed hard. She had heard quiet rumors about the Langford legacy, but never like this. Evelyn's voice remained calm.
She met Victor's eyes. Funny how habits travel through generations. Victor's face flushed. "These are stories," he muttered. "Anyone can make things up." Evelyn didn't blink. "Your grandfather had a scar on his left hand. He got it the day he tried to smash a glass near my head. Missed, cut himself, and later told everyone it was a gardening accident." The lobby felt suffocatingly quiet. A few customers quietly gathered their things and left. No one wanted to witness what was unfolding. Victor felt control slipping from his grasp. "I spent 70 years," Evelyn said softly, "wondering if I'd ever live long enough to show your family what someone like me could become once she stopped staying invisible." Each insult Victor had thrown at her hadn't weakened her, it had strengthened her. Every whisper and laugh had added weight to something powerful and patient that had been growing for decades. Victor straightened, forcing confidence into his voice. "Security," he barked. "Remove her. If she resists, call the police." Gasps rippled through the lobby. Evelyn didn't move. Her shoulders lifted, her spine straightened. She no longer looked fragile, she looked unshakable. "Are you certain," she asked quietly, "you want to call the police on a client of your own bank? The press might enjoy that story." The room froze. At that exact moment, the glass doors slid open. A tall man entered, his presence commanding immediate respect. Samuel Reed, 60 years old, senior vice president and one of the bank's founding board members, walked in with measured confidence. Victor's stomach dropped. "Victor," Samuel said calmly, his voice carrying authority, "why am I hearing shouting from the 10th floor?" His eyes swept the room, security guards hovering, nervous clients, and Evelyn standing calmly at the center. Victor forced a smile. "Samuel, thank goodness, we have a disoriented woman with questionable documents." Samuel didn't respond. He walked straight past Victor and stopped in front of Evelyn. "Mrs. Brooks," he said warmly, "it's good to see you. Is everything all right?" The silence was absolute. Victor felt dizzy. Evelyn smiled, not triumphantly, but patiently. "Hello, Samuel. I seem to be having a misunderstanding with your bank's leadership." Samuel turned slowly toward Victor, his expression hardened. "My office, now." And without another word, Victor followed, his confidence gone, his future suddenly uncertain. The elevator doors closed with a muted chime, sealing Victor Langford inside a space that suddenly felt far too small. Samuel Reed stood beside him in silence, arms crossed, eyes fixed forward. The quiet was worse than shouting. Victor tried to speak, to explain, but every word tangled in his throat. The authority he had relied on for years felt useless now, stripped away by a single look from a man who truly held power. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with nervous energy. People whispered in clusters, replaying every word they had heard. Evelyn Brooks remained standing, calm and composed, as if the chaos around her belonged to another world. She rested both hands on her cane, breathing steadily, while the same eyes that once judged her now avoided her gaze. Respect had replaced mockery, and it had happened without her raising her voice even once. Lena approached cautiously, her tablet held close to her chest. Her earlier fear was gone, replaced by something closer to awe. "Mrs. Brooks," she said softly, "Mr. Reed asked me to assist you personally. Would you like to sit while we take care of your request?" Evelyn nodded, allowing herself to be guided to a leather chair near the counter. She sat with dignity, as if she had always belonged there. The lobby slowly quieted. Security guards stepped back, conversations faded. Whatever was about to happen next felt important, and everyone sensed it. Lena's fingers hovered over the screen as she entered Evelyn's account information, double-checking each number with care. Her hands trembled slightly. She swallowed and looked up.
Would you like me to read your balance aloud? Yes, Evelyn said calmly. Clear and loud. Transparency matters. Lena took a breath. Your primary checking account balance is $832,000. The reaction was instant, a sharp intake of breath, a handbag slipping from nervous fingers. Someone gasped openly. The room seemed to tilt as assumptions shattered all at once. Evelyn's expression didn't change. She simply waited. And your investment portfolio totals $4.1 million. You also have an education trust valued at $11.6 million. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Nearly $16 million, sitting quietly under the name of a woman they had mocked minutes earlier. Just then, the elevator doors opened. Victor stepped first, his face pale, his expensive suit wrinkled as if he had aged years in a matter of minutes. Samuel followed, calm and controlled, his presence alone commanding attention. He surveyed the lobby and spoke evenly. Victor Langford, you will apologize to Mrs. Brooks, properly, right now. Victor's mouth opened. No words came. Evelyn stood slowly, not hurried, not dramatic. Every movement was deliberate. She looked at Victor with neither anger nor satisfaction, only clarity. Didn't know what, she asked quietly, that I had money, that I had value, or that dignity isn't something you measure by appearances. Victor's shoulders sagged. The answer didn't matter. There was no defense left. Samuel stepped forward. Mrs. Brooks is not only a client, she is one of the largest contributors to our educational initiatives. Over the last decade, she has funded scholarships for hundreds of students from underprivileged communities.
The weight of that truth hit harder than any accusation. Victor had insulted someone who embodied everything the bank claimed to stand for. Evelyn reached into her coat and pulled out her phone. "I should mention," she said gently, "I recorded this entire interaction. Old habits. Evidence matters." Samuel nodded slowly. "The board will review this immediately. Victor Langford, you are suspended pending a full investigation." Victor looked around the lobby, searching for sympathy. He found none. The same crowd that once laughed now watched in silence as security approached him instead. As Victor was escorted away, Evelyn returned to her seat. The drama seemed to drain from the room, replaced by something quieter but deeper, reflection. Lena sat beside her again. "Would you like to make any transfers today?" "Yes," Evelyn replied with a small smile. "I have students waiting for opportunity." Months passed. Sterling Union Bank changed in ways no one expected. Policies were rewritten, training programs rebuilt. Faces once hardened by arrogance softened with humility. And one bright morning, Evelyn Brooks walked through the same lobby again, this time as a newly appointed board member, the first black woman to hold the position in the bank's long history. People stood when she entered, not out of fear, out of respect. Victor Langford was gone. His fall had been swift and final. The recording spread faster than anyone could contain it, turning him into a lesson taught in leadership seminars and ethics courses. Doors closed wherever he went. Evelyn never celebrated his downfall. She didn't need to. Her victory was quieter, lasting, and far more powerful. She continued funding scholarships, mentoring young minds, and reminding everyone she met of a truth she had learned long ago. Patience is not weakness. Dignity is power, and true wealth is what you leave behind in others. 6 months later, the bank no longer felt like the same place. The change wasn't just visible in policy manuals or training slides, it lived in the air. Conversations were softer, smiles were more genuine. Employees no longer scanned shoes and coats before deciding how much respect to give. Something fundamental had shifted, and everyone knew exactly why. On a crisp autumn morning, Evelyn Brooks walked through the front doors once again. The marble floors gleamed as always, but this time the atmosphere was different. People stood instinctively as she entered, not because they were instructed, but because respect had become natural. She moved slowly, her cane tapping gently against the floor, her posture upright and steady. Age had never diminished her presence. If anything, it had refined it.
She was no longer just a client. She was now a member of the board of directors. For the first time in the bank's 100-year history, a black woman held that seat. Evelyn took her place at the long conference table later that day, sunlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Around her sat executives who once might have overlooked her without a second glance. Now they listened carefully. Every word she spoke carried weight, not because of money, but because of wisdom earned the hard way. Policies can change overnight, but mindsets take longer. If we're serious about inclusion, we must practice it when no one is watching. No one interrupted her. Samuel Reed, now officially serving as interim CEO, nodded in agreement. Since Victor's removal, profits had surged, customer trust had deepened, and public perception of the bank had transformed. Numbers confirmed what Evelyn already knew. Respect wasn't just moral, it was smart. Later that afternoon, Lena, now promoted to Director of Inclusive Client Services, knocked gently on Evelyn's office door. The nameplate outside read simply, Evelyn Brooks, board member. Lena still paused every time she saw it, not out of disbelief anymore, but gratitude. "I have today's scholarship updates," Lena said, handing her a folder. Evelyn smiled as she opened it. Inside were names, stories, and progress reports. Students studying engineering, medicine, teaching, architecture, young people who came from neighborhoods where dreams were often delayed or dismissed. "These," Evelyn said softly, tapping the folder, "are my real investments." That evening, across the city, Victor Langford stood behind the counter of a small convenience store, folding receipts with stiff fingers. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him. No tailored suit, no private office, no authority. Customers barely looked at him. Some spoke sharply, others ignored him completely. For the first time in his life, Victor felt invisible. He replayed the moment over and over, the laugh, the dismissal, the confidence he once thought untouchable. Now every rejection letter carried the same quiet message: reputation matters. The financial world was smaller than he had ever realized, and his name had become a warning. Back at the bank, preparations were underway for the annual scholarship ceremony. The auditorium filled quickly. Families sat shoulder to shoulder, hope and pride shining in their eyes. Evelyn stood backstage, holding a stack of handwritten letters tied neatly with ribbon. Jonas joined her. "You've changed more than this institution," he said quietly. "You've changed people." Evelyn shook her head gently. "People change when they're ready. I just gave them a mirror." When she stepped onto the stage, the applause was long and heartfelt. She waited patiently until the room settled. "I spent most of my life being underestimated, not because I lacked ability, but because others lacked imagination." The audience leaned in. "I saved when it was hard. I invested when no one expected me to, and I believed in children the world had already dismissed, not because I wanted recognition, but because dignity deserves opportunity." She paused, letting the words sink in. "When you lift someone, you don't lose height, you gain purpose." That night, Evelyn returned home tired but fulfilled. On her desk sat a growing stack of letters, thank you notes from students whose lives had changed direction. She opened one carefully.
Dear Mrs. Brooks, it read, "Today, I signed my first contract as a civil engineer. I grew up believing success was for other people. You proved me wrong." Tears warmed her eyes. She placed the letter gently into a drawer already filled with hundreds like it. Each one was proof that quiet strength could echo louder than cruelty ever could. Weeks later, the city honored Evelyn with a Lifetime Achievement Award. Standing at the podium, she spoke simply, "True wealth isn't what you collect, it's what you plant." The crowd rose to its feet. And somewhere, in a small store under flickering lights, Victor Langford watched the ceremony on a muted television. He recognized the woman he once tried to humiliate, and for the first time, he understood the full cost of his arrogance. Evelyn Brooks never sought revenge. She chose transformation instead. She turned humiliation into education, judgment into opportunity, and patience into power.
in her story became a reminder whispered in boardrooms and classrooms alike. When dignity meets preparation, no door can stay closed forever. Years passed, quietly and steadily, the way real change always does. Evelyn Brooks turned 92, then 93, and yet every Wednesday morning she still walked into the bank with her familiar cane and calm smile. Not to check balances, not to review profits. She came to listen, to meet new scholarship applicants, to hear their fears, their hopes, their unfinished dreams. The building that once tried to erase her now waited for her presence. Her office on the 15th floor had become a place of stories. Students sat across from her, hands folded tightly, voices shaking with nerves. Evelyn never rushed them. She let silence work. She asked questions no one else had asked them before, not about grades or resumes, but about resilience, about the moment they almost gave up, about who believed in them when no one else did. By the time they left, they stood taller, even if they didn't yet know the outcome. The scholarship program expanded beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a fund now became a foundation. Tutors were hired, mentors volunteered, internships were created. Other banks reached out, wanting to copy the model. Evelyn welcomed collaboration, but remained firm on one thing: dignity first. Every policy, every interview, every decision had to pass that test. If it didn't belong. One winter afternoon, Lena, now overseeing national outreach, brought in a thin envelope. "This one came from Houston," she said softly. "I thought you'd want to read it yourself." Evelyn smiled, recognizing the careful handwriting before she even opened it. She read slowly, eyes softening with every line. The letter ended with news that made her inhale deeply. Another student, first in his family, had been accepted into medical school. She closed the envelope and leaned back, staring out at the city skyline. For a moment, memories flooded in. The cold mornings scrubbing floors, the long nights grading papers, the quiet discipline of saving when no one was watching. None of it had been wasted. Every unseen effort had been preparing her for this season of life. Across the city, Victor Langford's world had narrowed. He moved from job to job, never staying long. The confidence he once wore like armor was gone. People spoke over him now, dismissed him, judged him by the same shallow measures he once used on others. The irony was heavy, but it taught him something no lecture ever could. Power without character leaves nothing behind. Evelyn Brooks avoided news about the bank, but her name appeared everywhere. Articles praised the institution's transformation. Profits were strong, but more importantly, trust had returned. Customers spoke of fairness, employees spoke of pride. Victor felt a sting each time he saw her face, calm and unbothered, never mentioning him. Her silence was louder than revenge. On Evelyn's 95th birthday, the foundation hosted a quiet gathering. No press, no speeches, just students, families, and colleagues sharing food and laughter. One young woman stood up unexpectedly, voice trembling with emotion. "I wouldn't be here without you, not just in school, in life." Others followed, story after story, a chorus of gratitude filling the room. Evelyn listened, hands folded, eyes shining. When they finished, she stood slowly. "Everything you're thanking me for," she said gently, "came from choices you made. I only opened a door. You walked through it." She paused, letting the truth settle. "And one day, you'll open doors for others. That's how this works." As the evening ended, Samuel walked beside her toward the exit. "You've built something that will outlive all of us," he said quietly. Evelyn shook her head with a small smile. "No," she replied. "I helped people remember what we're supposed to be." Time continued its steady march. Evelyn eventually reduced her visits, then stopped coming weekly. When she turned 98, she resigned her board seat, insisting it was time for younger voices to lead. The bank honored her with a simple plaque at the entrance, not flashy, not loud, just her name and a single line beneath it. Opportunity grows where dignity is protected. When Evelyn Brooks passed peacefully in her sleep a year later, the city paused. Schools held moments of silence, scholarships were renamed, letters poured in by the thousands. At the bank, employees gathered in the lobby where it all began. No one laughed, no one whispered. They stood quietly, understanding that they were standing on ground changed by one woman's refusal to be diminished. Victor heard the news on a radio during a late shift. He stopped what he was doing and listened until the announcer finished. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded once slowly, as if finally accepting a truth he had resisted for years. Evelyn Brooks never raised her voice to win. She never chased applause. She simply lived prepared, patient, and principled. When injustice met her, it didn't destroy her. It revealed her. And through her, an institution learned what leadership truly meant. Her story didn't end with wealth or titles. It lived on in students that graduated, families that broke cycles, in a bank that learned respect isn't charity, it's foundation. And somewhere in every quiet act of fairness that followed, Evelyn's legacy continued to speak, steady and unshakable, long after she was gone.